Good evening, everyone. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you could all please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. How's everyone doing tonight? All right, I like to hear it. Well, we're excited. My name is Rob. I'm from the Rotary Club of Hingham, and I'm the president this year. Also a graduate of Hingham High School. So, yeah, you can clap for me. It's fine. Thank you. Thank you. It's not an easy school to get out of, so that's why it's great that you guys are all here. It means you've done something special. My job is to really share with you what Rotary is about. I'll do a real quick 2-second thing about it because I know we got some times. So how many of you have heard of polio? How many know someone that's affected with polio? Okay, not many of you. So one of Rotary's biggest feats is the eradication of polio. So we have worked really hard over the last couple of decades to make sure that it's no longer a factor. So Rotary Club, it's really a powerful organization. It's an international organization. It's a bunch of do-gooders. They volunteer their time, they volunteer their treasure, they volunteer their money. They really do a lot of work throughout the world to make sure it's a better place. They put a stamp on the world. So that's the only thing I want to say about Rotary right now. It's really a great organization. And I hope that you guys, when you're going through your college days and you're going into your careers, and once you get out and you look for these kind of things and these kind of organizations to get involved with, because it's just a different level of doing good throughout the world. So if you're looking to make an impact, look up Rotary when you get out into your worlds. There's also Rotaract clubs in your colleges. Make sure you're trying to get involved with them when you get there. Throughout high school, you know, there's a bunch of different ways to get involved with, like the Global Citizens Project, I believe it's called. You know, it's a great organization, do a lot of similar things. So we're really looking forward to this event tonight, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. One thing I do want to mention, all of our money is through donations and fundraisers, and we have a fundraiser coming up right here at the South Shore Country Club on June 15th. It's our golf tournament, and it goes to a lot of things such as scholarships for our local high school kids. So we have a scholarship program that we do, and we've benefited a lot of individuals throughout the year. So it's one of the things that goes to it. If you have any questions on it, see a Rotarian tonight. There's some flyers on the back table. I have some flyers, and I'm happy to give you any more information. So without further ado, I'd like to bring up Dr. McCann. So here. Do that one more time. Okay, I think we're good.
All right. Thank you. On behalf of Hingham High School, I'd like to welcome all of you to our 12th annual Century Club banquet. I'd like to thank the Rotary, first of all, for their generous support of this event, which honors 100 outstanding students. But I have to confess, we actually have 102 students with us here tonight, because 2 grades had ties, and we certainly weren't going to stop at 24, so there were actually 26 in 2 classes. From the school side, I'd like very much to thank Mary Joan Fryer, who's a parent, for all her hard work coordinating this event, and also another parent, Mary Ellen Jones, who's not only a parent but also a wonderful graphic designer. The programs you're looking at and the invitation that you received are the results of her graphic design skills. So what is the Century Club? Well, actually it was instituted in 2003 as a way to recognize those students who excel in the classroom. We base the selection of you, 102 people, on your unweighted GPA, your grade point average. The top 25 students in each of the 4 classes will be honored after dinner tonight with a certificate from the high school and a gift from the Rotary. We also have a very special gift for some seniors who have been members of this club for 4 years. Not an easy accomplishment, so we want to recognize those people specifically. My congratulations to all of you for this wonderful achievement, and I hope you enjoy dinner, and we'll be back with a wonderful guest speaker, another Hingham High School graduate, after that. Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your dinner. Well, tonight I have a rare privilege to introduce a Hingham High School graduate. Molly Williams is a member of the Hingham High School class of 2003. Molly has quite an impressive resume. She received her Bachelor of Science in Human Science with a concentration in International Health from Georgetown University. During her years there, she studied at the University of Copenhagen in Denmark in the Medical Practice and Policy program and at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. She's just about to complete her Master's of Science in Global Health Policy from the University of London. Molly's jobs have taken her all over the world. She's worked in Cape Town at Red Cross Children's Hospital, in Boston at Harvard Medical School, at World Vision International in Papua New Guinea. Currently, she is a regional funding coordinator at Oxfam America right here in Boston. Under her picture in the 2003 yearbook, Molly wrote, "Who can say where the road goes?" I looked that up today. Well, her road has taken her all over Africa, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Europe. She is an excellent example of a Hingham High graduate who truly has become a global citizen. I am delighted to introduce tonight's speaker, Molly Williams.
So thanks, Dr. McCann, for such a nice introduction, and thanks everyone for having me here tonight. It's such a pleasure to be around such talent. I didn't have the Century Club when I graduated. I just missed it by a year. And also a pleasure to be with all your parents, faculty members, and community Rotarians. As you heard, I graduated from Hingham High in 2003. Seems like a long time ago now, but I remember the days quite well. I kept busy. I took part in sports, social events, put in a lot of time at homework and school projects, and I worked at the famous bagel shop. I also was the president of the high school volunteer club. I believe that this was my first formal experience in service to my community. In Volunteer Club, we participated in small community projects, we spent time with the elderly at nursing homes, and helped at town events. One of these was planting trees at the Hingham Library. At that time, the library had just been newly renovated, and the trees were needed to beautify the landscape. Now those same trees are grown in a huge source of cool shade and pretty foliage for the area, not to mention the good that they give to the soil and natural environment. When I graduated from high school, I knew that I wanted to go to college outside of Massachusetts. I wanted to challenge myself, learn new culture, and be away from my family. What better place than the country's capital? In Washington, D.C., at Georgetown, I was exposed to the workings of U.S. politics and the international arena. Georgetown is a Jesuit university, has a diverse student population, and encourages principles of equality and respect for all. Core courses engaged us in the social realities of poverty, oppression, and injustice. I personally took to the courses on African studies and population health. Here we learned about infectious disease like Ebola or malaria, HIV/AIDS, and tuberculosis, as well as the rise of democracy and capitalism in newly independent African nations. You'd think it was this academic interest that led me to choose my 2 study abroad locations in my junior year at college. I chose Copenhagen, Denmark, and Cape Town, South Africa, as Dr. McCann mentioned. But actually, if I'm honest, I believe I chose those, 1, because the credits counted, and 2nd, because no one in my university, very few people had gone there. I wanted to go somewhere different that challenged me, that was interesting, and would open up the world to me. Traveling to Scandinavia and the African continent seemed like such a thrill. I didn't know anyone that had been to either of those places. They felt like boundaries that would hold new things to discover, and they certainly did. South Africa was the best. I still recommend that to anyone and everyone to go there. It's a gorgeous country with a symbolic history. It has famous surfing beaches, prominent mountains, and a vibrant modern nightlife. But what I liked most was the time I spent in the townships. Here is where you saw the divide of the wealthy city elite and the rural poor. The Cape Town townships were the place designated for Black people to live by the previous apartheid legislation. Apartheid was the system of racial segregation enforced by the white colonial ruling party. You'd probably seen the movies Tsotsi, Mandela, or Invictus. which shed light on the impact of discriminatory rule that existed in that country. That only ended in 1994, and the legacy still very much lives on today. The townships were vastly underdeveloped, underserviced, and had severe overcrowding, where millions of people were living in tin-roofed homes stacked upon one another. They didn't have access or means to health or education services. With the AIDS epidemic in the country, I joined the Treatment Action Campaign movement, which went door to door to educate these people and their families on the right to health care and worked at a clinic providing antiretrovirals to those with the disease. At that time, despite the escalating numbers, the campaign was still trying to convince the South African government that there was an epidemic in the country, as was the rest of the world, and of the critical importance to provide access to quality care. It was in working as a volunteer that I learned how fortunate I am, and we all are, to have health insurance and education. I'd recommend the book And the Band Played On by Randy Schultz if you'd like to learn more about it. Returning to DC after this experience clearly wasn't the same. I had a contact at Yale that needed a research assistant, so I set out after graduation for Senegal in West Africa. Here I carried a backpack and tent, moving from village to village on donkey carts or fishing boats to live amongst rural women. The study task was simple: observe and document the traditional practices of women and their impact on the environment. I essentially became a member of their families, like in the Peace Corps. My name was Nilan Senghor, and I'd accompany them as they climbed trees to chop down branches from the forests and secretly cut down mangroves inside coastal preservations so that they could get wood to cook dinner that night. We'd also walk miles to the few water pumps where we'd wait in long lines for clean water. Unfortunately, deforestation is a big problem in Senegal as in West Africa. The destruction of trees that take years to grow not only removes valuable natural resources, it also destroys ecosystems where animals and fish live and depletes the resources which so many families depend upon for their household and income needs. Population growth and economic pressure has caused these resources to deplete. Here is again where I learned how lucky I am, again, to have a gas stove and somehow water running out of my kitchen sink and shower every time I simply turn on a faucet. After finishing up that research, I stayed a bit longer to work in a maternity ward in a district hospital. I supported pregnant women, deliveries, and newborn care alongside rural nurses. The facilities were grim. There was no bed sheets, no comfy pillows, no little button to push and a nurse arrives. And mosquitoes were everywhere. With Senegal being a majority Muslim and polygamous country, families and their relatives all live together in one compound. They share one kitchen and they have one toilet outhouse. And wives are very close and supportive of one another. Here is where I realized just how amazing women are. If you'd like to be further inspired by the strength of oppressed women, and haven't read this one yet, Half the Sky is a great book by Nicholas Kristof. Following, I quickly got a job with a well-known international nonprofit called World Vision. It's known for its child sponsorship programs, which you may know of. You donate $30 a month to a child in another country. It's also known for the coordination of response capacity in response to an emergency. Like in the case of the Haiti earthquake, World Vision was a big responder and a lead there. I really wanted to get out of the office and into the field to be part of such responses. So I pursued a position in South Sudan. South Sudan, if you've heard of it, is in the center of Africa. It's 1/3 the size of the United States. The country experiences severe annual cycles of drought, flood, and famine. It's also been at war for the last century, 100 years of people living through war. It caused millions of people to be in constant forced displacement, having to leave their house and walk hundreds of miles to seek refuge in neighboring countries. In this context, I would say the hardest part, aside from pulling many all-nighters, not partying, but finishing up proposals for urgent donor support, was with food. It was very hard to find food. I traveled to all corners of the country, often in 8-seater small planes, and in each place saw food deprivation. In urban locations, the markets weren't stable, and there was very limited grocery stores, and the concept of a restaurant barely existed. In rural locations, food supply was entirely dependent on the rain. Farmers tirelessly prepared and labored over their land during the dry season in hopes of good rainfall and high crop productivity. During the dry season, I remember waking from my thatch-roofed mud hut and was able to wave hello across the barren land to a farmer I would say 3 miles away. While in the wet season, we'd be dancing in the rain, marveling at how we'd never seen land so green. But it was the sight of malnourished, starving children right in front of me at displacement camps and refugee camps that sobered any selfish thoughts of my own discomfort. If only grocery stores were affordable and within reach to everyone. If you'd like to learn more about the strife of the South Sudanese, I recommend a great book called What is the What by Dave Eggers. The South Sudanese, along with being some of the most resilient people in the world, identify with ethnic groups, each with their own strong personality and history. Unfortunately, it's these ethnic groups and their divides that has led to the civil war ongoing there today, which you've probably seen captured in the news. But I was there to join in a moment of peace, which was their independence from the North in 2011. They're the newest country in the world. This was such a momentous celebration. I joined alongside armed military personnel and joyful tribal dancers and musicians and thousands of community members in the street under the hot, glaring sun to cheer on the country as it counted down the final seconds to independence. I'm so fortunate to have been part of this nascent country's history when we forgot the suffering, the pain, and the discrimination that's ongoing. In preparation to become the newest country of the world, the capital of Juba wanted to prepare itself for the big screen. So what did it do? Juba at that time only had 5 miles of paved road. That's not even the Free Street run twice. It got so little infrastructural support from its previous government in Khartoum, it was called the biggest village in Africa, and yet was about to be declared the newest country's capital. But with the little money it had, the government built a countdown clock to the hour and second of independence on July 9th at one of the city's roundabouts. And it also built a beautifully lit fountain in another roundabout. The countdown clock lost electricity several times, putting the number back at 0. And once the water began pouring out of the fountain, people came running from all directions with their water buckets to bring that clean water home. This is when I learned the importance of good governance. Following South Sudan, I moved on to the Pacific. I oversaw programming in East Timor, Papua New Guinea, Vanuatu, and Solomon Islands. I know those are strange names. If you aren't familiar, those are tropical island nations located northeast of Australia. These countries are well known for their scuba diving and for their anthropological studies. They're home to over 800 different ethnic groups. However, they face low levels of development and extreme levels of gender-based violence. Also known are their levels of insecurity. I had four keys to get into my front door. I lived inside a gated community. I couldn't walk alone on the sidewalks or go to the local markets. And I had an emergency switch under my car steering wheel that I could activate if the car was to be hijacked or if I was to be taken hostage. This experience reminded me of the value of protection and feeling safe within my community. This diverse experience only added to the previous understanding of political, social, and economic inequality that exists across the world. Now I work with Oxfam. I'm based in Boston, and I oversee fundraising for the development programs in West Africa, East Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. I'm very proud to be working with this organization. It takes bringing about solutions to global poverty and injustice to an entire other level. Let me share a few examples of this with you. One is called the Behind the Brands campaign. This campaign targets the top 10 biggest food and beverage companies, such as Coca-Cola, Nestle, and Kellogg, and monitors the impacts and contributions of these companies on the status of women, water, land, climate change, transparency, and farm workers. They monitor the conditions of these farm workers that provide them with the sugar and grains that they use to then do their major business. These companies collectively generate revenues of more than $1 billion a day. With over 900 million people going to bed hungry every night, that's 1 in 8, these companies have enormous influence in bringing about a solution and a positive change in the way food is produced, the way natural resources are used, and the extent to which these profits can reach the marginalized millions at the bottom of their value chains. Another example is our work in advocating for greater transparency and accountability in the extractive industries sector. What's that sector? Well, it's the sector which includes all the multinational oil, gas, and mining companies. This is another sector that generates huge profits, often larger than the income of a nation, but often at the expense of poor communities. Community lands are seized without consultation by these companies, leaving farming and fishing communities without a means of livelihood. The same companies also enter into unfair revenue agreements with poor governments. Oxfam is promoting pro-poor investment of these revenues back to the same communities where the natural resources were taken from, and working closely with the national governments to prevent a resource curse. Lastly, the campaign to reform the humanitarian system. Currently, the U.S. government food aid system brings food from the Midwest across the globe and delivers this food to famine-struck populations using only American ships, American carriers, and American distributing partners. This only supports a cycle of dependence. Instead, we advocate for regional and local food purchase. So if Sudan is having a famine, perhaps Uganda and Kenya can supply the food to respond, since they're their neighboring nations. This would be a more efficient and development-oriented solution. It requires more investment in food supply systems of developing countries so that they can take care of their own people rather than continue the cycle of aid forever. If you're interested to learn more about the impact of the private sector on income inequality, I'd recommend the book Capital by Thomas Piketty. My parents here, Brian and Judy, have heard many of my stories and joined me in trips to Tanzania, Thailand, and China, where they have witnessed many of the world's inequalities, blessings, and opportunities themselves. I'm so glad to have had the opportunity to have them join alongside my adventures and to have had their support and encouragement through the now 54 countries under my belt. But you don't need to travel to find need, or to support, or to discover the passion that comes along service work. There are plenty of ways in which you can engage in meaningful social change and give back to your local community. You're all leaders that can act upon the values that have been taught to you in your future education and careers. It can be as simple as planting trees at your local library, or as complex as choosing not to purchase goods from certain food and beverage companies. Either way, you're giving back and conscious of the important action that just one person can make in making the world a better place. I'll end here with one way to start. There's a campaign ongoing now called Red Nose Day. Maybe some of you have seen this in social media popping up or on the TV. Or maybe you've seen the red noses that have been handed out at Walgreens. Tonight on NBC, comedians are using the power of entertainment to engage an audience on ways to create a positive change in the world. You can tune in to NBC and maybe you'll see Oxfam mentioned. This is just one more creative way in which you can use your talents as a very talented student body here in front of me to service others and change the world. Thanks again for having me here tonight, and congrats on your achievement.
Thank you, Molly. That was terrific. I don't know how many of you students are involved in our Global Citizenship Program. That did not exist when Molly was at Hingham High, but I'm sure she would be a charter member. You might think of some of her work as you pursue your goals along those lines. Now it's time to award our certificates and mementos, so if the freshman members of the Century Club could join Mrs. Hendrickson on the ramp there, she'll help you get in line. All right, I would like to begin the presentation. If I could have your attention, please. Thank you. I would like to introduce to you the freshman members of the Century Club, beginning with Andrew Adams. Sydney Askey. Sydney Bohr. Isabella Chapari. Sydney Conway. Dylan Davis. Lily Dickerson. Ethan Drinkwater. Grace Galco. Michael Hannon. Spencer Havens. Elena Hearn. Kaylee Hill. Michael Hill. Kaylee Johannes. Amanda Ken. Hannah Kerber. Margaret Lee. Quinn McGuire. Kara McConnell, who couldn't be with us. Stephanie O'Connell, excuse me. Salmon Uman Lochtefeld. Kelly Osterberg. Sophie Pavin. Stephen Reese. And Gabrielle Viola. Congratulations to the freshmen. Could I have the sophomores, please? And now let's introduce the sophomores. Our first sophomore, Mary Kate Brennan. Thea Brugman. Ian Kane. Sarah Kalame. Kyle Dismaris. Jonathan Ford. Noah Goodman. Eve Hewins. Rachel Jensen. Alexandra Kindler. Emily Lamond. Vaughn Larson. Zachary Lytle. Maeve Maloney. Cotter McCarthy. Rose McDonald. Catherine McDowell. Patrick McEgan. Kathleen Murray. Nicholas Najar. James Riccadelli. Matthew Rice. Kyle Sutton. Olivia Thomas. And Angela White. Would the juniors please join Mrs. Henriksen? And now for the juniors, please. Our first entrant is Jessica Anderson. Cameron Baker. Madison Collins. Casey Cosgrove. Nicholas Sear. Maximilian Fickenworth. Gabrielle Fluitt. Samantha Garland. Catherine Guinan. William Harrington. Mackenzie Hunt. Erin Hurley. Helene Inglesby. David Lean. Ashley Longo. Madeline McKenzie. Christine McClellan. Mark Meniskin. Catherine O'Connell. Andrew Rubino. Kara Scary. Kevin Scheuer. Andrew Szynski. Kara Wheeler. And Scott Whitney. Would our senior members please join Mrs. Henriksen? And now for the members of the class of 2015. As I mentioned earlier, there are 5 people among the 25 there who have been at this banquet for the last 4 years, and they will receive a special commemorative paperweight for their wonderful academic achievements. Our first inductee was unable to be here, Molly Bennett. Haley Brown. Kenneth Theokar. Amanda Conkey. Margot Crisidiello. Margot is one of the 5-year members, so special congratulations. Olivia Kandari. Davis Good. Vincent Hurley. Heather Hussey. Jessica Leonard. And the second of our 4-year members, Kiernan Manning. Karen. I say it right, Karen? Okay, just checking. Karen. Connor McDermott. Christopher McDonald. Sadie McGurr. Elizabeth McKeon White. Madeline Metzger. Thomas Noonan. And our third four-year honoree, Scott Pallara. Emily Rasso. And another four-year member, Clark Riccadelli. Jake Salvucci. Anya Tracy. And the fifth of our four-year members, Jacob Van Dyne. Brady Walker. Alexander Weaver. And last but not least, Andrea White. Congratulations, you are welcome. Congratulations to all of you. Seniors, we'll be seeing you soon for more awards next Tuesday night. Juniors, you had your night earlier this week. Freshmen and sophomores, I look forward to seeing you at many more of these banquets and many more awards night. Thank you all so much for coming, and thank you again to the Rotary for having us. Good evening.